Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. It feels like everywhere you turn these days, another headline is screaming about some crazy news cyber attack or data breach. Honestly, sometimes it's enough to make you want to just unplug from the internet altogether. But that's not really an option in our hyper-connected world, is it?
Definitely not. And to be honest, it's tough to know what to focus on with so much information coming at us from all
You're
directions.
telling me,
Yeah, right.
which is exactly why we do these deep dives to help you cut through the noise. We've been digging through a mountain of reports, articles, and threat intelligence bulletins to bring you the most fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying trends in cybersecurity. We've got expert recommendations for the Trump administration, a deep dive into Chinese cyber activity, and we'll even unravel a crypto scam that's making waves.
All to help you understand the threats and how to protect yourself from them.
All right, so let's jump right in. The one thing that seems to be on everyone's mind lately is artificial intelligence. AI is transforming so many aspects of our lives, and the cybersecurity world is no exception. But here's the thing, it's a double-edged sword.
Exactly. AI is a powerful tool that can be used for good or for evil. And we're seeing both sides leveraging it in the cybersecurity arena.
So the bad guys are using AI to become even better at being bad guys.
It's like giving a supervillain a superpower boost. They're using AI to automate tasks that used to require human intelligence, making their attacks more sophisticated and harder to detect.
I read this article in the Wall Street Journal the other day about how hackers are using Google's Gemini. You know, the one everyone's talking about? They're using it for everything from reconnaissance to figuring out how to slip past security systems undetected.
It's like a cheat code for cybercrime. And there's even this AI chatbot called Ghost GPT that's been making headlines.
Ghost GPT, never heard of it.
It's specifically designed for cybercriminals. It helps them write malware craft phishing emails. It's basically a one-stop shop for digital mayhem.
So is it game over for the good guys then? Is AI the ultimate weapon for cybercriminals?
Not quite. Remember, AI is a double-edged sword. Cybersecurity professionals are also using it to bolster their defenses.
So it's like an AI arms race, both sides constantly trying to outsmart each other.
Exactly. Companies like MCSoft are using AI to create incredibly effective malware detection tools.
Yeah.
In fact, they actually achieved a 100% detection rate in a real-world test.
100%.
Yeah, pretty impressive, right?
That is impressive. But doesn't this constant back and forth make you wonder about the long-term implications? Where does this all end?
It raises some serious questions about the future of cybersecurity. Will AI create an escalating arms race, where attacks and defenses become increasingly sophisticated? And what are the ethical implications? How do we ensure AI is used responsibly and doesn't end up making the world a more dangerous place?
Those are some heavy questions. So while AI can be a powerful tool for good, it's clear that it also presents some serious challenges. What are your thoughts on the potential for misuse, especially when it comes to things like disinformation campaigns?
That's a valid concern. We've already seen examples of AI being used to create fake news articles and social media posts that are incredibly convincing. It's becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish between what's real and what's fabricated.
It's scary to think about how easily AI can be used to manipulate people. And we can't forget about the nation-state actors who are using AI for their own purposes. The U.S. government recently imposed sanctions on Iran and Russia for using AI-generated disinformation to interfere in elections.
Exactly. AI is being weaponized in the information war, and it's something we need to be very aware of. These campaigns can have a real impact on public opinion and political discourse.
It feels like we're entering a new era of information warfare.
We are. And it's not just about spreading disinformation. It's also about using AI to target individuals with personalized propaganda, tailored to exploit their biases and beliefs.
Okay, so what can we do about it? How do we protect ourselves in this age of AI-powered manipulation?
Well, awareness is key. We need to be critical of the information we consume online and develop strategies for verifying sources.
So it's like we need to develop a stronger BS detector.
Exactly. We also need to demand transparency from social media platforms and tech companies about how they're using AI and what they're doing to combat its misuse.
So it sounds like a lot of responsibility falls on individuals to be more discerning about what they see and hear online. But what about the role of government? Shouldn't they be doing more to regulate the use of AI?
Absolutely. Government regulation is essential to set boundaries and ensure that AI is developed and used ethically. This includes things like data privacy laws, guidelines for responsible AI development, and even potential restrictions on the use of AI for certain applications, like autonomous weapons systems, for example.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers. but it's clear that we need a multifaceted approach involving individuals, governments, and tech companies to address the challenges posed by AI.
We need to be proactive and work together to ensure that AI is used to benefit society, not to harm it.
Well said. AI's impact on cybersecurity is just getting started, and as we've seen, it's already changing the game in some pretty significant ways. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've got a lot more ground to cover in today's deep dive.
There's a lot more to unpack.
So let's move on to our next topic, which is all about a sector that's been under constant attack lately, telecom companies.
They're definitely in the crosshairs. It's interesting because while AI is certainly grabbing a lot of headlines, it's not the only story in cybersecurity that's keeping me up at night these days.
Oh. What else is on your radar?
Well, we're seeing a surge in attacks targeting a sector that's absolutely vital to our daily lives. I'm talking about telecom companies.
Telecoms.
Yeah, they seem to be in the crosshairs lately.
Now that you mention it, I have seen a few headlines about that. It's not just random hackers going after them, is it?
Definitely not. We're seeing nation-state actors getting involved, which is a whole other level of sophistication and resources.
So why are telecoms such attractive targets for these guys?
Well, for starters, they hold a massive amount of data. Customer information call, records, internet traffic, you name it, they've got it.
Okay, that makes sense. Data is valuable, so I can see why hackers would be after it.
And it's not just about the data itself. Telecoms also control critical infrastructure that we all rely on.
So disrupting that infrastructure could cause chaos, data breaches, service outages, even economic damage.
Yeah, the potential consequences are pretty scary.
No kidding. So are there any specific examples of these kinds of attacks that you've been following?
Definitely. The Wall Street Journal has been doing some great reporting on this. They've been tracking a series of attacks attributed to Chinese hackers, specifically targeting U.S. infrastructure, including telecoms.
China, huh?
It's a major player in the cyber espionage game.
Makes sense. This isn't the first time we've seen China targeting telecoms, right? I remember those Salt Typhoon attacks from a few years back.
Oh yeah, those were a big deal. They hit multiple U.S. telecom providers, really exposed some vulnerabilities in our systems.
What happened after that? Did anything change?
Well, it was definitely a wake-up call for a lot of people. It showed how these kinds of attacks can have real-world consequences. The U.S. government even started considering banning certain Chinese telecom equipment and routers to try to mitigate the risk.
Wow, so it's like we're on the edge of a new kind of conflict, a cyber warfare arms race.
It's a possibility for sure. And it's not just limited to China and the U.S. We're seeing similar patterns playing out in other parts of the world, too.
Really?
Yeah, for example, there have been reports of Ukraine-linked groups targeting Russian ISPs, disrupting internet access during the ongoing conflict.
Makes sense. I guess cyber warfare is just becoming another tool in the geopolitical toolbox.
It's a new frontier for conflict.
So this is a global issue then, not just a regional one.
Exactly. And the stakes are only getting higher. Imagine a coordinated attack that takes down critical infrastructure on a large scale. Communications networks, power grids, financial systems.
It doesn't bear thinking about.
And the consequences could be devastating.
Okay, so what can we do about it? It feels like we're just sitting ducks waiting for the next attack.
Well, I wouldn't say that. There are things we can do both individually and collectively.
Like what?
Well, for starters, we need to understand the threats.
Okay, so knowledge is power.
Exactly. We also need to demand better security from the companies we rely on. Telecoms, banks, energy providers. They all have a responsibility to protect our data and our infrastructure.
Right, push them to do better.
And of course, we need to push for stronger government policies to protect critical infrastructure.
Like what kinds of policies?
Well, things like mandatory security standards for critical infrastructure providers, increased investment in cybersecurity research and development, and better coordination among government agencies and international partners.
Sounds like a tall order.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's essential if we want to stay ahead of the curve in this new era of cyber warfare.
All right, so we've talked about AI, we've talked about nation-state attacks, but let's not forget about the good old-fashioned human element. Cyber criminals are still exploiting human vulnerabilities to carry out their attacks.
Absolutely. Social engineering tactics are still incredibly effective. Phishing emails, fake websites, those annoying phone scams, they all rely on tricking people into making a mistake.
I hate those phone scams.
Me too. But they work, which is why criminals keep using them.
It's amazing how creative these criminals can be. They're constantly coming up with new ways to deceive people.
They have to stay ahead of the game, too.
Remember that contagious interview campaign we talked about earlier? That was a pretty ingenious tactic.
Oh, yeah, that one was clever. Classic social engineering. North Korean hackers created fake job listings. mimicking legitimate companies. Used a sense of urgency to pressure people into making a quick decision. They even created fake versions of popular software to make the scam more convincing.
It's scary how they can prey on people's hopes and dreams. You're excited about a job opportunity and bam, you've been compromised.
It highlights how important it is to be vigilant and skeptical. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. Always verify the source. Don't click on suspicious links. Never give out personal information unless you're absolutely sure it's safe.
Solid advice. But let's be real, even the most cautious person can slip up sometimes. We're all human, we all make mistakes.
That's true, which is why it's also important to have layers of security in place. Strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, up-to-date security software. It's about minimizing the risk, even if you do fall for a phishing attempt or click on a bad link.
Right. It's about creating a safety net so that one mistake doesn't lead to a complete disaster. Speaking of mistakes, let's talk about another area where people are getting tricked. The world of cryptocurrency.
Ah, yes, crypto. A whole other world of scams and schemes.
We came across this fascinating case from the SANS Internet Storm Center. It involves something called a multi-signature wallet and a whole lot of TRX tokens.
Multi-signature wallets. Those can be tricky.
Before we get into the details, can you explain what a multi-signature wallet is and how it's supposed to work?
Sure. So a multi-signature wallet requires multiple keys to authorize a transaction. Think of it like a safe deposit box that needs two keys to open, one held by you and one held by someone else. It's designed to increase security, prevents a single person from making unauthorized transactions.
Sounds pretty secure.
It is, in theory, but as with anything, security is only as good as the people using it.
So how did the scammers exploit this?
Well, they created a multi-signature wallet and made it seem like it held a large sum of USDT, which is a stable coin pegged to the US dollar. To access this supposed fortune, victims were told they needed to transfer a small amount of PRX tokens to cover transaction fees.
So they tricked people into thinking they were getting a great deal. But it was all a ruse to steal their TRX tokens.
Classic bait and switch. They exploited people's greed and their lack of understanding of how multi-signature wallets actually work.
So it's another example of how important it is to do your research. Understand the risks before investing in anything, especially cryptocurrencies.
Absolutely. The crypto world is still relatively unregulated, and there are a lot of scams out there. It's crucial to be cautious, skeptical. Never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Great advice. Okay, so we've talked about AI, nation-state attacks, social engineering, crypto scams. Seems like no one is safe from cyber threats these days.
Well, it's definitely a challenging landscape out there.
Let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that's at the heart of all these attacks. Data. Our source material is packed with examples of data breaches, affecting everyone from sports equipment manufacturers to hospitals to even cybersecurity vendors themselves.
It's a data free-for-all out there.
It really is.
Data is the new gold, and everyone is after it.
It's like the Wild West of the digital age, with hackers constantly trying to find new ways to steal our personal information, financial data, even our health records.
And it seems like no one is immune.
So you're saying we're all potential victims?
We all have data that's valuable to someone.
Okay, so what can we do about it? How do we protect our data in this increasingly hostile environment?
Well, on an individual level, we can be more careful about what information we share online. Use strong passwords. Be wary of phishing attempts.
The basics.
The basics are important, but it's also crucial for organizations to step up their game. Implement robust security measures.
So it's not just about individuals being careful.
Not at all. Organizations have a responsibility to protect the data they collect.
And that's where government policies and regulations come in, right?
Absolutely. Governments have a responsibility to set standards, enforce data protection laws, hold organizations accountable for data breaches.
We actually came across this document titled 10 Cyber Recommendations for the Trump Administration. And while the title might seem a bit dated, it actually offers some valuable insights into data protection strategies that are still relevant today.
It's a good read. Covers a lot of ground.
So what are some of the key takeaways from this document? What can we learn from it?
Well, one key recommendation is to establish a clear national cybersecurity strategy. This involves identifying critical assets, assessing risks, developing a plan to mitigate those risks.
Sounds like a sensible approach.
It's about having a framework for action. The document also emphasizes the need for strong leadership and coordination among different government agencies.
So getting everyone on the same page.
Exactly. Cybersecurity is not just an IT issue, it's a national security issue. It requires a whole-of-government approach.
Makes sense. But it's not just about the government, right? The private sector has a role to play as well.
Absolutely. The document stresses the need for public-private partnerships to share information, develop best practices, work together to improve cybersecurity.
So collaboration is key.
It is. We're all in this together. And we need to be sharing information and resources to stay ahead of the threats.
The document also highlights the importance of investing in research and development to stay ahead of emerging threats.
That's crucial. The cyber threat landscape is constantly evolving. We can't afford to be complacent.
So it's a comprehensive approach involving everyone from individuals to businesses to governments.
Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility.
We all have a role to play.
Exactly. We all have data that's valuable to someone.
So much to think about. It can feel pretty overwhelming, honestly, like we're just constantly playing catch-up, trying to stay one step ahead of the bad guys.
It's definitely a challenge.
But before we get too doom and gloom here, let's talk about what we can actually do to protect ourselves.
Okay.
Where do we even begin?
Well, I think one of the most important things to remember is that cybersecurity isn't just about technology. It's about people.
People.
Yeah. We're often the weakest link in the chain.
So you're saying it's not just about having the latest antivirus software.
Exactly. Think about it. Even the most secure system in the world can be compromised. If someone falls for a phishing email or clicks on a malicious link.
Right. It all comes back to those human vulnerabilities we talked about earlier. So how do we make ourselves less vulnerable? Is it just a matter of being more careful online?
Being careful is definitely part of it. Think before you click verify sources. Don't give out personal information unless you're absolutely sure it's safe. But it's also important to understand the tactics that cybercriminals use.
Like those fake job interviews we discussed. That was a pretty clever tactic.
It was. The contagious interview campaign was a prime example of that. How attackers exploit our desires and aspirations. They targeted people who were actively looking for jobs, preyed on their eagerness to land a new position.
So knowledge is power. Knowing what to look out for so we don't fall for these traps.
Exactly. And there are resources available to help us stay informed. The CERT-EU reports, for example, provide valuable insights into the latest attack vectors, malware trends, vulnerabilities.
I've seen those reports. They're actually pretty interesting to read.
They are. They do a good job of breaking down complex technical concepts, making them accessible to a wider audience.
And they're full of real-world examples, which helps to bring the threats to life.
Those examples are crucial. They help us understand how these threats play out in real life. Like the case where hackers used malicious PDFs to spy on journalists and activists.
Via WhatsApp?
Oh yeah, the Paragon spyware case? That one was pretty disturbing.
It was. It really highlighted how even platforms with end-to-end encryption, like WhatsApp, can be vulnerable to sophisticated attacks.
It was a wake-up call for a lot of people. Showed that no system is foolproof.
Exactly. We need to be constantly vigilant.
It's almost like we're in an arms race.
Yeah.
Constantly trying to stay ahead of the bad guys.
In a way we are, but it's not just about reacting to threats. It's about being proactive.
Yeah.
Building a more secure digital world.
Okay, so what does that look like? How do we move from a reactive approach to a more proactive one?
Well, it requires a multifaceted approach. On a technical level, it means investing in robust security measures, like multi-factor authentication, intrusion detection systems, data encryption.
So making it harder for the attackers to get in the first place? Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just about technology. It's also about education and awareness. We need to train people to recognize and avoid threats.
Right. Empower individuals to be the first line of defense. But this can't just be a burden on individuals, right? What about the role of governments and organizations?
They have a crucial role to play as well. Governments need to enact and enforce strong cybersecurity laws and regulations. Organizations need to prioritize cybersecurity, invest in security measures, have plans in place to respond to incidents.
So it's a shared responsibility. We all need to do our part to create a more secure digital world.
Absolutely. Cybersecurity is not just an IT issue. It's a societal issue. It affects all of us, and we all have a stake in it.
Well said. This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. We've covered a lot of ground, from the rise of AI and cyber attacks, to the increasing sophistication of nation-state actors, to the importance of protecting our data.
It's a complex and ever-changing landscape.
It is.
But the good news is that there are steps we can take to mitigate the risks.
So what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important thing is to be aware, be informed, and be proactive. Stay up to date on the latest threats, implement security measures. Don't be afraid to ask questions and seek help if you need it.
Great advice. And remember, folks, this deep dive is just the beginning. We've only scratched the surface of this vast and fascinating topic. We encourage you to explore the links in the show notes to continue your cybersecurity journey.
Stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay safe out there.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's a wrap for this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through the world of cybersecurity. Until next time, stay informed, stay secure, and keep learning.